Today's episode is brought to you by Alexandra Park BJJ. Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is a full contact martial art and combat sport that was developed in Brazil in the 20th century. With roots in Judo and Japanese Jiu-Jitsu, has been developed and refined into a unique grappling art with the aim to allow a smaller and weaker individual to beat a bigger and stronger opponent with the application of proper technique. Based in Muswell Hill, North London, Alexandra Park BJJ's classes are designed so that you can develop your fitness levels, balance, coordination and flexibility in a no-pressure environment, and to provide the opportunity to start a new sport at a reasonable price. At Alexandra Park BJJ, we aim to be inclusive so that everyone can benefit from this incredible art, not just the athletic or ultra-competitive. To book your free class, head over to alexandraparkbjj.co.uk or email inquiries at alexandraparkbjj.co.uk.
Welcome to Audiobookish, an audiobook review and discussion podcast looking at audiobooks both big and small, as well as radio plays, narrative podcasts, anything audiobook-ish. This podcast may contain spoilers, rants, curse words, mispronunciations of names and places, and more.
Hey everyone, you are listening to Audiobookish. My name is Fahed Rahman and I'm joined by Poppy Knight.
Hello.
And today we will be discussing The Dark is Rising by Susan Cooper. I'll read a bit of the blurb for this one. So The Dark is Rising is a 12-part dramatisation for radio of Susan Cooper's classic 1970s novel for families, originated by Complicité and Simon McBurney, directed and adapted for radio by Simon McBurney and co-adapter Robert MacFarlane. It's a co-production by Complicité and Catherine Bailey Productions for BBC World Service. It's starring Toby Jones, Harriet Walter, Paul Rhys and Simon McBurney, with an ensemble cast including 13-year-old Noah Alexander as Will, with original music by actor and singer-songwriter Johnny Flynn, Louisa Gernstein and Heloise Turnstall Behrens, with sound design by Gareth Fry. Do you want to tell people what The Dark is Rising is about a little bit?
Yes, so, the night will be bad, and tomorrow will be beyond imagining. The Dark is Rising tells the story of Will Stanton, an ordinary boy who begins to have eerie and magical experiences on his 11th birthday, one snowy December. Will discovers that he belongs to a group of ancient time-travelling beings called the Old Ones, who are guardians of the light, and must wage an unending battle against the forces of the dark. The story opens on Midwinter's Eve. In the landscape around Will Stanton's quiet English village, something is very wrong. Birds are behaving strangely, and a blizzard is building, the walker is abroad, and the power of the dark is surging. Together with his fellow Old Ones, Merriman and The Lady, Will must untangle the riddle of the walker, protect his family from the terrifying rider, collect the signs of light, and defeat the dark. It is an immense burden on young shoulders. When the dark comes rising, who will hold it back?
Great. So we kind of decided to do this one because it's kind of the season for kind of wintry, Christmassy stories. So last year we did The Hogfather, so kind of in a similar vein we decided to do this one, kind of continuing the kind of fantasy Christmas stories that we're doing for our kind of like winter specials. So I'm not too sure where to start the discussion on this one.
Well, what kind of drew you to it? Because you suggested this one.
Yes, I mean, it caught my eye last year because I do like listening to BBC dramas, and I think if I remember last year, it got kind of quite favourable reviews, and I'm always looking for like fantasy authors that I've not listened to or read before, so that's kind of what drew me to it, why I kind of suggested it. Kind of my first notes are really about the audio and the sound design. So I think like my first tip for listening to this is, I think it's a far better experience if you're listening to it with headphones on. When I had it on my mobile phone speaker, I think the mix wasn't like ideal for that experience. I felt that some of the musical or like the sound effect notes kind of drowned out some of the dialogue in
Right.
bits, which is a shame because the audio design, the sound design, I felt was excellent overall. But I think to kind of make the most advantage of that, you probably do need your headphones on. How did you feel about that?
So I totally get you, because I listened to the first kind of 5 episodes, I think it was, that wasn't through headphones, and then I had my headphones in for the rest of it, and then got that 3D design sound stuff of it. You know, it sounds like someone's on your right, it sounds like someone's on your left, that kind of stuff that I just didn't get playing it through first car speakers and then my phone speakers. So yeah, I definitely think that is an added element, and they mention that in the like a little introduction teaser episode thing at the bottom of BBC Sounds.
Yeah.
So I definitely think that is a good way to listen to it. I didn't have quite the same thing as you of finding that it drowned it out. I think there was one bit when I was listening in the car that I didn't quite catch something, but I kind of thought that was more just in the car and it was quite loud because of driving down the motorway kind of thing. So I can't necessarily judge it. And I wouldn't have said that it's a disadvantage if you listen to it without headphones.
Yeah.
I kind of just felt that headphones added something extra. But I did think that it was interesting to have it so heavily designed for headphones for this story, with the bit that you had there about it being a novel for families, originally the book.
Yeah.
And yeah, I started listening to it with my partner in the car because I thought we'd both enjoy it. And I enjoyed that like communal listening experience part of it as well. So I think, yeah, for me, it would be a trade-off. If you're listening to it on your own, pop your headphones in, but don't let that exclude you from doing it, kind of listening with other people on kind of external speakers or whatever. I mean, if you have an amazing surround sound system, then you can have the best of all worlds.
Best of both worlds, yeah.
But yeah, that's kind of what I'd say, I think.
Yeah, yes, I'd agree with that. And yeah, I just wanted to kind of also talk a little bit about the music as well. Kind of, they had kind of quite, just the music and the sound effects I thought were like excellent overall.
Completely
kind
agree.
of like, I think especially with the music, they made some interesting choices. Is kind of, I don't know how would you describe the songs in this? Is kind of like, I don't want to say like folksy, but it's kind of, they were very like, there's an eerie quality to a lot of the musical accompaniments to this.
Yeah, there definitely was. I mean, my music theory is getting tested, as I think it has before on this, to properly describe it. I don't really know, but yeah, it's kind of, it's quite orchestral, I guess. Like, I think there are a lot of different instruments in it and a lot of different vocal parts in it as well. So it's a really kind of full musical part, and like you say, really eerie. It's really great for setting the atmosphere, and not only setting the atmosphere, also reacting to the atmosphere, right? So the music is used as well as bits throughout. I'm pretty sure it's used at the start and end of episodes classically, but it changes. So like there's episodes kind of near the peak where you've got really high tension and the music is hyped up, it's much more tense, and then you have kind of leave one episode on a sad moment and the music is much lower and much slower. And yeah, it just, the fact that it is adapted to the point you're at in the story, just incredible. And I just really enjoyed the music in itself as an enjoyable thing to listen to, and is going to be in my head for a while. So yeah, no, I thought that was absolutely fabulous, and I agree with you about the sound design itself being fantastic as well. I thought maybe at some points that 3D-ness that they'd done for me felt a little bit overused for no need. But like the actual sound design itself, I thought was fantastic. You know, kind of the sounds that we use really built up the soundscape and where you are, who you're with, what you're hearing, what the emotion is, just making it a really full imaginative world. Fantastic. And yeah, the 3D did add a lot to it as well in most cases. So yeah, I thought all sound wise, absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of quite clear a lot of work went into making it. You know, when the audio sound design works well, it kind of brings you into the world of the story, which I think it kind of did quite well.
Yeah. Kind of leading on from that, I felt what sometimes took me out of the story a bit were some of the performances.
Okay.
Because I think I felt sometimes it just didn't feel super natural. I think I found it partly with Will, though I understand completely this is a child actor.
Yeah.
And a lot of this kind of comes with experience and stuff like that. But yeah, some of that to me felt kind of more that I could feel the script beneath the words kind of thing, more than being fully immersed in it. Kind of like the main example I could give was it felt sometimes like he was over-enunciating, so kind of like overly reading the words and getting the words exactly correct, that lost some of the believability in the performance, I felt. But it was a good performance overall. It was just, that style of it, I felt, for me, took me out a bit, made me less convinced by his character. But then it wasn't just him necessarily. I think there was some of the adult actors as well where I felt the same kind of thing. I kind of could hear that these were written words rather than the character speaking. And I think it was maybe a case sometimes of, if actors are used to being able to use their body while they act, that then maybe they overact when they just have their voice. Is possibly a reason why it was. But basically I felt sometimes like I was listening to a radio play rather than I was listening in on Will's adventure and this story. You know what I mean? But overall it was fantastic, and I definitely think that some performances were incredible. So the narrator,
he was awesome. He was so good. So good. Yeah. So
that was Simon McBurney, and absolutely brilliant. I could listen to him all day, every day. Incredible voice and wonderful performance, and perfectly suited to this eerie, wintry, fantasy, dark story as well. Perfect. And then Hawken and Merriman, which was Toby Jones and Paul Rhys, I believe, as well. I thought they were really, really good. And my criticisms of the other performances didn't pull away from it totally. It just wasn't as immersive as those sections with these guys, which fully pulled me in. Yeah, I mean, I agree with your comments about the actor that I was playing Will. I mean, it's a difficult thing to kind of get that. So kind of Will's characters is, he's 11-year-old boy. He's been pulled into this strange world, and to kind of get that sense of like fear and awe, and to get that all kind of sounding natural is kind of quite. I mean, even for kind of adult actors, that would be quite a challenge. One of the things I was looking around a little bit on the internet for kind of different notes about what other people kind of picked up on this, and one of the things that I thought was quite interesting about some of the choices that the actors made was kind of around accents. So one of the things that was mentioned in a few places was that Will's family kind of had a RP BBC voice, and then it seemed like the locals had more like regional accents, and I was just wondering if that's something you picked up on. As well. A little bit, and certainly because Will's is like incredibly RP, I kind of feel, or maybe not RP, but certainly quite a posh sounding voice, really. And that then doesn't fit with the rest of the characters in the same place that they live. Like you say, I think I did notice that distinction there that I'm not sure really needs to be or should be. I mean, what did you think?
I think, to be fair, it's not something that I picked up on initially, but it's kind of when you're reading comments from other people, it's like, oh yeah, that was a bit weird that like Will's family sounds like completely different from like everyone else in the community almost. And it's kind of like, and it does seem like their family have been there for kind of like quite a long period of time as well. So there was that. I mean, until someone brought it up to me, it wasn't something that I'd necessarily had thought about, but it's kind of maybe just being a little bit nitpicky there. But overall, I think the star of the show for me was the narrator, Simon McBurney, and obviously Toby Jones very rarely does anything wrong, and I felt his performance was kind of especially good as well. So so I felt that was those are the two stats. And he like you mentioned, Simon's got like a quality to his voice that really kind of, it is beautiful to listen to. So I'll be it's kind of one of those voices where I'd be kind of maybe checking out if he's released any other audio books or radio plays.
I saw because I had the same thought and went and looked on Audible and could only see 3
it's such a shame.
But, I know. But I guess because he's the co-adapter and a producer and director or whatever on this, he's probably got his fingers in a lot of pies and not all that time to be reading a ton of audiobooks. But I'm glad he's done some, and I'm tempted to listen to some, even if they don't appeal to me as the book sense, because he is a fantastic narrator. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Okay, so should we talk a little bit about the story? What's kind of your first note that you've got written written down?
I think about the story, I was drawn to, I think, similar things that you were, kind of more fantasy stuff and an author that I don't know yet, and the intrigue and the darkness and stuff like that. So I was intrigued by that. One of the things I've got written down here about story, I guess isn't quite what you're getting at, but I did feel that in this being an adaptation as a radio play and not an unabridged audiobook, it has condensed down a novel into a much shorter time space. And I think I did feel like that meant it lost some of the depth that I imagine was in the original.
Yeah.
And kind of in a way that I think it maybe hit all the major plot events, but some of the reason and the substance and the lore behind them was maybe lost.
Yes. Yeah.
So it felt a bit more like we were just getting carried through these waypoints rather than a convincing story and all the motivations behind it and all the complexities behind it that would have made it richer. So I kind of felt like I was missing that. But I do like that this, for what it is a 12-part dramatisation that's really immersive. And so for that, I still think it was good. But for me, as a story, it was lacking some of that, believability, I guess, in the events that happened, because it didn't have enough meat behind it.
Yeah, so, I mean, I'd chime in with that as well. I'd kind of agree with that a little bit. When I was looking for notes online, it is an adaptation, and they have kind of taken some of the events in the book and put them in like a different order. So,
right.
So that was kind of one thing I noticed. And when I was also reading reviews in the book, there, like, a lot of the book focuses on like Will's internal world and kind of how he's interpreting these things, and that's really difficult to get across in like any sort of dramatization, let alone an audio adaptation. So that's, I think, maybe some of where the depth potentially is missing from.
Yeah, I definitely think that could be where it's missing from, because I think that was the thing. It kind of felt like Will just stumbled upon all these things. So, like, for some context for the listeners, Will is the sign seeker, and he has to find these 6 signs of light. And it felt a little bit like Will wasn't making many decisions that led him to these signs. He sort of just ended up at them. And I did like, there was one bit where it was like, this is important, this is how it should be, this is why he's appeared to us now. Something like that I thought was like, okay, fair enough. That kind of explains it a bit as to why it's not just, well, Merriman's just taking him to all the signs. What did it need Will for? Kind of, kind of explains it more, because it's more about fate. But I did feel like Will didn't have much agency in this adaptation, and probably, as you say, because his inner thinking wasn't really brought through it as much.
Yeah, and kind of just, Will, I don't want to say he comes across as a shallow character, because I don't think that's correct, but in terms of like his character journey, I don't think, I certainly didn't get a firm idea of who he was before, like who he is now, what he wants to become, what he's risking, and like where he wants to go. It does seem kind of like this, and maybe that's a theme within the book, kind of like fate having placed things upon you and you not having much agency in deciding what happens. I don't know, but it did feel kind of a little bit kind of this happened and then this happened and this happened, instead of like, because Will did this, as a result, that was the consequence, and then as a result of that consequence, he decided to do that, if that makes sense. Yeah.
Oh, it totally does. No, and I completely agree with you. And now, skipping to the end a bit, but I would recommend that you go listen to this. Yeah. And I wouldn't tell anyone that you can't listen to it without reading the book. Not at all. I think you can definitely enjoy it on its own. But just for the point that we're raising at the moment, I kind of feel like it works better, or on another level, as a love letter to the book.
Yes.
So sort of like, if you already know the book and you know the lore and you know the events of it, then you can listen to this, be immersed in an amazing audio experience and go, oh yeah, now that bit's happened. And you understand, probably, I would imagine, a bit more of the context behind it that allows you to appreciate that story even more and not pick the same fault with it. I would say, especially because when I was looking at it, I think The Darkest Rising is actually the second book in this series.
Yeah.
And so this completely does stand alone, but I imagine if you've read the first book, you've read the second book, and then you listen to this, love letter to it, then you'll take way more from it as well. But yes, don't think you have to read it before you listen. Definitely listen as well.
I think the thing is, there is a lot to recommend this adaptation. I think
for sure.
In terms of like the audio design, the performances generally. The other thing that I really kind of enjoyed was the setting of the world. It kind of relies on a lot of like UK folk tales that I wasn't necessarily that familiar with. Kind of these folky figures that I don't think necessarily are going to be on the national curriculum. So it's kind of like got my imagination thinking, because obviously Susan Cooper's like based these figures on something somewhere, and kind of like, you know, there's like a sort of like a headless horseman type figure, and the character of like Merriman is kind of based on another UK sort of mythical folk figure. As you know, there's also a character of like a blacksmith who, and that's the only reason I knew that blacksmith was like a folk figure, because he appeared in one of my favorite comics, Fables, as which is about a bunch of fairy tale characters that have been expelled from their fairy tale land. Ooh. And he's one of the blacksmith's character's name is the same as in that comic. So I was thinking, so she must be basing these characters off of different people in fables or folktales and stuff like that. So that was kind of really interesting.
That's really cool
to me. And there's just the eerie way she kind of places things, kind of like for example, the walker and the rider are really creepy characters. There's like a sense of like menace about them, especially in kind of different ways. Kind of there's a deliberate malice to the way like the rider talks to Will, and you know the schemes that he puts in place, where the walker is a more like chaotic agent. You don't really know whether he's going to do something bad or good, and there's always like that hint of danger about their kind of interactions with the character. And you know, especially the walker turns out to be kind of, there's like a tragic villainy to him, which I always quite enjoy. So yeah, that's both those characters immediately kind of grabbed me, as well as like the hints of, you know, me wanting to jump off and do like Wikipedia research and kind of like where she's found the inspiration to put these characters into her story as well.
Yeah, no, that's really cool. And yeah, I agree with what you said. I mean, I didn't know those connections, and I definitely want to check Fables out now. Yeah. But yeah, I agree with what you say about those characters, and that was really interesting. I think it's important to say, though, that don't listen to this and think that it is like utterly terrifying and you can't let your kids listen kind of thing. It very much is, I think, a family story, and the kids will be, you know, find it scary, but hopefully not in a absolutely terrifying way, but in a, wow, this is a dark, tense, engaging story, but is definitely suitable for families and they'd enjoy. And I kind of felt myself that maybe it's one that I would have enjoyed more when I was younger, kind of thing. I did definitely enjoy it, but I sort of feel like I might have enjoyed it more then, and then maybe, you know, now I would maybe enjoy it a lot, but with that bit of nostalgia in it. Again, really liked it. Definitely good for adults, but also for children as well. It's not as dark and horrible and scary and creepy as it might sound. It just has those elements in it really well. It did make me think a little bit about something that I did really love when I was a kid, which was a TV show called Through the Dragon's Eye, which was like educational story kind of thing. It was like helping you to read mainly. And it was like on during school hours. So like, you know, when teachers wheel out the TV on a stand. And so they'd play this. And I really loved it. I think I definitely watched it one time when I was ill. I don't know if that was the first time I watched it or whatever, but I saw this. And so my gran taped it for me when I was at school so I could watch the rest of them. And it was really good, and it has a similar vibe I felt in this, in that it is kid friendly, but it is also, there is a real threat of danger, and there is a really scary villain in there, and the kids have to work to overcome this and to not let darkness take over the whole world kind of thing. So yeah, I don't know, it was nice for me to have that little connection, I think. I think while we're going on into comparisons, the other things that kind of like maybe came to mind when I was thinking about this story and why I just wished it worked a bit better than it did, because I was especially thinking about like his dark materials, thinking, well, maybe part of the other reason it's not
I really enjoyed it. It's like this. It sounds like I'm being ultra critical.
No.
It's just when you compare this with like other stories that might be in a similar vein, like I think his Dark Materials also has a similar level of like jeopardy and fear. I think, and that's definitely suitable for children as well. But with like his Dark Materials, there was multiple characters that you could you understood what their mission was, and like it's basically this is just Will's story, and I just wish that maybe other parts of his family or he had a gang to do this adventure with.
Yeah, I mean, I guess he kind of does with the old ones, but I see what you mean. It doesn't really feel as much like that. Yeah, and I think another important comparison, not necessarily with the age bracket part, but is Guthrie that we've done a review of, and we both absolutely loved. So another BBC episodic dramatisation kind of thing that was absolutely fantastic. And yeah, I think the two have similar, where the sound design is great and the narration is great and some of the same kind of like fantasy elements in it. And that definitely did have the depth of story and stuff like that. So if you haven't listened to Guthrie yet, I definitely recommend it. And certainly if you enjoyed this, then I think you'll really like that. That was, super good.
Yep, cool. So I don't really have any other notes on this. So like for me, I found it really enjoyable, definitely worth listening to. There's 12 episodes, they're around 20-minute long each, so it's definitely it's not kind of be a massive mission to listen to this. It's really, I found it really enjoyable. The sound design was excellent, the performances overall was superb as well. It makes me interested in maybe checking out the audio book and seeing where the difference is. So maybe that's something you maybe do like next year at some point. Have you got any other notes?
That was cool, yeah. Yeah, just on that, it's sort of interesting because I was kind of wondering, with having the choice of reading kind of written word or listening to audiobook, I was sort of feeling like maybe I'd want to read this because having had this amazing audio experience with this adaptation, would the audiobook feel like it was missing that sound design or something like that, you know what I mean? Which it won't necessarily, but part of me was thinking like, well, maybe I do a completely different thing to try and get the backstory and read it visually. But yeah, I'd still be interested to see how the audiobook went. I'd be happy to listen to that. Yeah. There was one thing I feel like I can't not mention, and I wonder if you noticed it as well. But minute 5, or I guess it's the 6th minute, of episode 10, when Will is riding a horse, the sounds sounded very inappropriate to me. Did you have
I
that
didn't
at all?
I didn't pick up on that.
Okay. Well, then maybe I don't need to worry as much. There's some breathing noises, saying faster and yes a lot that felt inappropriate, especially coming from a 13-year-old, and especially thinking that an adult has written it for a 13-year-old to do that.
Yeah. Okay.
But I'm glad that you didn't think it, I guess, because maybe it is just me being really dirty-minded, because I was starting to think, like, how has anyone let this through when it's this obvious? But maybe it wasn't. So other things you said about it being, like, 20 minutes and stuff like that. And I've also seen, because my mum reached out to me about this book independently of knowing we were doing it for this, there was talking about kind of how there's like a reading suggestion for the book, and also you can do it for the listening for this adaptation of doing a part a day. So you can sort of follow it in real time with what's happening in the book. So yeah, it's sort of starting on the 20th of December and then listening to one episode each night for the 12 days. And then, you follow along with the days that are happening in the story, which is kind of cool and something you might want to do. And I think this is good because you do want to keep listening, and you certainly can, binge it, but it's not so cliffhangery Moorish at the end of the episodes that you'd feel like you were really putting a restriction on yourself to say, no, I'll listen to the next bit tomorrow. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because there are definitely some stuff where if you told me I could only listen to one chapter a day, no, that's not fair. I need to know what happens, kind of thing. And this isn't that. I think they end in a nice way where you can listen to them all together, or you can pace it out like that and do that cool kind of read along thing, which is cool. Yeah. And another quick thing that I saw online as well is that Complicity, who did this, are running a competition at the moment aimed at 11 to 13-year-olds for writing a radio play. Oh, cool. And the top 2 that they pick, they're gonna make into a short 2-minute radio play. and that closes on the 8th of January. So yeah, if you or your kids are interested in that, then that could be cool.
That sounds brilliant. So I think that's kind of a recommendation from both of us.
Yeah, definitely.
Really. Okay, guys. So thank you so much for listening to us this year. I hope everyone that's listening has a great Christmas and a great 2024 now, isn't it? A great 2024.
Gonna be.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Please continue to support the podcast. You can do that by following us on social media, leaving a rating or review wherever you're listening to us. And if you want to get in touch, you can get in touch with us on social media at audiobookishpod or email audiobookishpod@gmail.com. We've got a Patreon account and a tip jar in the episode description. So if you can donate there, that'd be great. On a personal note, as we are recording this, my close mate Imran, who's previously been a guest on the podcast, his daughter is seriously ill in hospital at the moment. So please keep her in your thought and prayers over the festive season. And Imran, I love you, dude, and I'm praying that your daughter has a swift recovery. Okay, sorry on that, to end on that a little bit of a somber note. Okay, thanks, Poppy. Let's say bye to everyone.
Bye.